Every year, we invite inspiring VIPs from abroad to share their visions towards a better future and present. This year, an unprecedented lineup of worldwide design experts will engage in close dialogue centered on the theme Truth, Compassion, and Ugliness. By exploring the social value of design from a whole new level, this summit will spark discussion and stimulate reflection. And first, we will have Professor Kees de Bond, our Dean of School of Design from PolyU, to give us a welcome remark.
Thank you so much. It's an honor welcoming you here this afternoon, and in particular, the special guest that we have here today. It's true that you are all here now. I know there's compassion with the topic of social innovation, and I resist to see any ugliness here in the room. I'm also happy to have my class here, the students of the Executive Master of Meaningful Innovation, because if we speak about social innovation, it's about meaning, it's about what does this do to people and what can we do to people and how can we connect better with people in ways that people feel better, are more connected, can enjoy life more. And going deeper into understanding the underlying phenomena, I think that is what we will do today. So thank you for coming. I'm sure you will enjoy the discussion, and I'm sure there will be enough depth in understanding better what is or can be social innovation. Thank you for being here.
Next, we will have our Director of Jockey Club, the Design Institute for Social Innovation, Mr. Alvin Yip, to introduce the first panel discussion.
First of all, I would like to introduce Professor Michael Earhoff, our dear friend. Michael is the founding dean of the Cologne International School of Design and also a former CEO of the German Design Council. He's known for, of course, through his many books in design, arts, and culture. We always joke that he actually writes faster than we read. So you can imagine how many books has written, and a lot of them becomes essential in the libraries in many of the universities. I also like to really thank Michael for really convening a lot of the speakers that comes from overseas here. So thank you so much, Michael. So Michael, please pick a chair, anyone you want. And Michael will be also moderating the first panel discussion. Now, the next speaker, I would like to introduce also Professor Tim Marshall. Tim was the former dean of Parsons School of Design, one of the most well-known schools in the world in New York. And now he, of course, further moved out, becomes the provost and chief academic officer of the New School University in New York. Actually, Tim and Michael co-wrote a very interesting book called The Design Dictionary a good number of years ago, and it was like the first kind of publication of its kind. So, Tim, please come to the stage. All right, so no one wants that particular chair.
We are just talking with chairs. So.
We've been fighting about the chair.
Next, also in the first panel, we have Rudy Bao from France. Of course, as you know, that he's a very internationally well-known graphic designer, having worked with major prestigious institutes like the Picasso Museum, the Louvre, and Pompidou Center. Rudy, please. So, Michael, the stage is yours.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we are speaking too fast, especially this goes for the interpreters should shout, because sometimes we are a little bit fast and can happen. Well, Madonna, what's happening now? Well, it's some sound. It's also sound design, you know, this is a topic which is very important. Well, I have to say, we agreed on one point. We will not talk about what is truth, because our topic is design and truth, but it's too difficult. And also the philosophers since centuries did not find out what it is. So we have to find something what we are talking about this, around this, what is called truth. Maybe it is seriousness or honest. And I would like to ask you, Tim, first with this, because we had some correspondent in front and you had some arguments.
Yeah, so I agree. The category of truth, I mean, design is a huge, particularly in the English language, is a massive word. It covers so much territory. And truth is so ambiguous and so, impossible that the two words together were quite daunting to think about how to. So I like your idea of being more concrete and speaking more to the actual circumstances in which we kind of engage design and what that tells us about particular moments, because I find it increasingly difficult to generalize about much at all. So
just to give one, that's not only a design problem, you get to know more and more, for example, in natural sciences, that obviously more than 1/3 of all researchers in natural sciences are fakes, because they need it to become professors or something. I think most of the professors are fakes.
And I think, design serves a very useful function in actually just camouflaging truth in sort of, or keeping us away from. If we encountered the world in its actuality all the time, we would never have design in some ways. So design is going to structure our behaviors in the world in some way, and it's always going to be conditioning that in some sort.
Tim, you go too quick. I think it's interesting to take this terminology, truth, because it is one of the problems of the Occident. I think Platon and other philosophers try to do something who is absolute. And what is interesting is that the China has a very other definition of truthness. And this definition is very more contextual. It's true only what here, now, and not a definition, an absolute definition.
Makes way more
every
sense.
time if we try to go to an absolute truthness, we go also to a kind of authoritarian thinking. And that's, for me, a kind of design, is the universal design. This idea, it's true for me, it's true for the Occident, so it must be true for all. That's not right.
There was even this old strange category, good design, which is always this, as if it's such a moralistic topic in this, So we could more talk about, like Friedrich Engels, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But the problem is the pudding's still there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite fond of this. There's an American satirist who coined this term truthiness in relationship to the Bush era, where they always tried to present things which everyone knew was a lie, but they had to somehow give it enough appearance of truthiness to make it look like you could get away with it, which had nothing to do with truth. And maybe design is more like that. It's more like telling you some sort of truthiness about the world, which is not trying to be essential, it's not trying to be universal, it's not trying to be, it's actually just working in a context in a particular cultural sense, and how we inhabit that. This building is an interesting example of this. The outside is speaking one language and the inside is speaking a completely different language. I mean, the outside is speaking the language of the architect and the spectacle of the architect, and the inside, which we inhabit, is more like conditioned by this ego in some ways. So I don't know what that says about truthiness, but this feels like a truthiness building in some ways.
What sure is also not the point of design, it's the point of what the government was marketing, was politician will do with design, and this has often not to do with true. Right. This is often something to do with camouflage or with branding. This means with bringing up trueness, who is a way to give in shadow another trueness. And I think at first we have to make true in plural. There are different truths.
But even, let's come even back a little bit to what you said with the government or other institutions or agencies trying to use design to cover something. It is, of course, and we all know this, for example, in photos and media activities. Uta Brandis once did a fantastic project together with students, where they took very famous photos. For example, East German soldier jumping across the wall to West Berlin. If you saw the real photo, which never was published, but we found it, there are a lot of TV cameras standing around. So this was a show. But then it's condensed, and we have a lot of these things, So, and it's not only in the media area, but we have always this kind of intended lies, and obviously design is helping with this.
Is it always bad, though? Is that always bad, necessarily?
No, I don't know.
There is a truth.
I know what you had this nice example, if you, because we all came by airplane, do you want to sit in an airplane and to feel that you are in the middle of the
No way.
10,000 meters high?
I want the designer of an airplane to lie to me every minute. I need it to lie to me. I need it to not be the truth, because otherwise I would be never on a plane. So we need this in our lives. We need to have deceptions in our life somehow. It's how we deal with technology. It's how we deal with this world that we've constructed. I mean, it's no longer a natural world full of laws of nature, which this book about truth and design talks all about laws of nature. But the laws of this technology that we've made, there are no laws. We have to design some way to cope and to deal with it, which I don't know if that's truth so much. That's more about dealing with things and inhabiting them and making sense of them and creating some kind of way to be.
So then at the end is the question, who in which hand is the design?
Exactly right.
So if it's in the stupid one, so we never can find, it's just neutral.
Right.
This is good.
Right, no
But
way.
there's even one more. I think I mentioned it shortly to you, both of you, and to Kirsten also, Kirsten. There's quite an interesting topic by a German theoretician from system theory, and he just came up with this and said, maybe this incredible success of design worldwide has happened because nobody trusts design. So is it maybe that the people even love design because you don't have to trust it?
Then we sort of don't trust ourselves in some way.
Yeah, or, if you have to trust something, it becomes so heavy, and you have to discuss it, and you have to take it for serious. Does anybody else still want something serious? Just a question.
But it's very interesting what you say, but this is a little bit contrary of the good form, denial form, because this is serious. So this mean design has also to deal with this perception. I have to confront me on this object who is not true, who has a fiction. And this means you have to design this fiction, this little difference in between what really can be and what not is. Huh? And this is very interesting, because this gives also the possibility. I just see the film about these old persons. It's only the rational element don't give the solution. The solution is to fact it is easy. It is not easy at all, but we have to fact it is easy. So and also to fact if you are wrong, it's not so terrible, because we are often confronted of machines. Huh? We have these automats, and we have two kind of automats. There are complex automats, and then we say, oh, the machine is complex. We are boring machines, and we say the machine or the designer is boring. And we have very simple machine, and we cannot do it. And then we are boring. So I prefer complex machines.
Yeah, but I understand what you mean, because this is, but then we have these complex machines, we need the easy way to act with it. I don't want, when I hate cars, but if I were driving a car, I don't want always to be explained how complicated the car is working and how dangerous it is. I even hate that on any cigarette package now is smoking is dangerous. 'Cause
That
then
took
I get
exactly
ill.
7 minutes to get to the cigarette packets.
No, but all these announcements, if you put on every car, the announcement driving a car is dangerous,
Yeah,
there will
exactly.
be much more accidents.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So we have to hide this. So is design hiding everything?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe not everything.
Poor moderator.
I think design is always going to be hiding and revealing. It's a choice about what you hide, what you reveal. So that it's constantly, it's never about, and that's why I think this topic, truth is so complicated to talk about with design, because there's always a decision by, very fallible human beings about which things you want to make apparent and which things you want to put in the back and which things you want to be at the front and which things you want people to be very, very heightenedly aware of and other things you want people to be not aware of very much. And these are all decisions that get made at particular moments, particular situations that are, and I guess it becomes then, I think it's also hard to talk about truth. It's more about the designer not than with truth to me. Design is design. I mean, you can't really give it these kinds of qualities. But what is the motivation of the designer? Is the motivation of the designer actually embodied in the design? Because we know it never works this way. It never is the same what the person wants and what one gets at the end of the day. How does this relationship work? What do we do about that? Does it accommodate us as human beings to redesign, to sort of project ourselves back into that design? Maybe that's more the point. It's like, how does the design work with us as complicit designers or as collaborative designers or in some ways? So the truth is not really in the design. It's more in this relationship that is established through something.
Would it be also in a kind of openness? What I always like to say, design offers possibilities. If it wants to offer more, it is dictatorial nonsense.
If I want to try and project the truth and I'm a designer, then I have to be authoritarian at some level.
Yeah. That was still in the 50s, 1950s, 60s, 70s, with all this functionalism and these nonsense, they really, you had to use it as it was designed.
Right, exactly.
What a terror, But this is the problem with every chair, as I noticed.
I'm not really using this how it should be designed, I don't think.
I think it's not the problem of this one.
I don't think I'm using it how it was designed, but it's the only way.
But let's move a little bit more still. If there may be, we can talk about the quality of surface. Because, I love to quote, we also had this short discussion, Kirsten and me. I love to quote, there's a German philosopher, Ernst Bloch, and he has, I don't know if you really can translate it into English, the British have a little bit reduced language, but so I would say, he calls it the banality of the deepness, or of the depth. It is, all these terrible teachers who always, when they look at a piece of art, they ask what is behind it. They never see what there is. They always ask what is behind. And this is nonsense. I always tell them the wall. So we have to gain a competence of understanding the surface as a quality.
But also the process. So what was before and what could you do with the act of design? And this, I think it's very, very important in socialist design, in social design. Is
That was
prepared.
That was a French misunderstanding. No, but
talk about that.
Is this point of not absolutely. You make a part of a transformation. You have a before and an after, and what is very, very important is the modesty also of this act of I bring it from this point to this point, and not this absolute, and the contextual element. And I think I'm a little bit afraid about this also success of social design. I like it. In one way, I'm absolutely convinced, but In the other point, I'm a little bit afraid that starts to come a too popular point and to say everything is social. It's not true. It's not true, and it's not true that we can resolve everything with design also. And that's also important, is we need collaboration with other activities. We need economy, we need sociology, we need other tools to resolve any social problems. And we can just make it a little bit better. And this is very important. So it's out of subject, but...
Yeah. No. I agree that design can never operate really independently. I think that's obvious.
Nevertheless, let's say, and then I'm criticizing myself with some of what I said, but we also know that design is offering something we like to call in philosophy really very empathetically experience. That is, even if you don't understand the moment, but in the end, how you handle something, how you see something, you hear something, how we work here with the light, for example. You know, everything here is designed. The light is, we are in a fictive room here somehow. So, but it makes, at the end, is a kind of experience also existing, which will not be forgotten. We know from our childhood still specific kind of activities. But so this is existing. So design, beyond the surface, it is also offering something, which sometimes is very difficult to understand.
I mean, it's still in the experience that you kind of evidence that, I guess. I mean, that's the only thing we have, is really the experience, the sensorial experience of what it means to be designed for, in some ways. Like, what is it, you know, the autonomy of us. There's an argument about, you know, that truth in design is only when you can be a full human agent, but that's also impossible. I mean, I don't understand how that can be possible.
I think the room is a good experience, and for the truthness is to say, okay, it's a good experience or a sad experience. It's an experience, this reality, this one. But the problem is if you start to say this is the solution. And if you say this is the solution for all conference rooms in the world, this is this way for me, design has problem also. Right.
But this was the other problem of designers for too many decades. They always wanted to find solutions. Right. I think one of the big qualities in design, and especially, and you see it more and more, is that they first start to find the problems. And then you can, and there's no, of course we all know there's not a final solution, but so this is clear, this is evident, I think. But the question always is, you know, but what you said, beneath the evidence, is there something? You know, there was this famous sentence several years ago, design is invisible. And what we see and what we're talking about normally is what is evident. But is there something impact, something which is hidden, something suddenly touching us from the back? This also, for me, means...
I think so.
Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. No, I think you can see if we keep using buildings, and you do notice that certain buildings, you just watch the way people behave, and there is something, and it's very hard to say, oh, it's because the wall is going at this angle and the window's here, and the doors are this way, exactly why, but you suddenly see relations between people and the way they inhabit, and whether there's pleasure and enjoyment and a desire to stay in a space, you know, and to be there, to go back to it, you sort of gravitate towards things. There are obviously design elements that go into that and make it work, but I'm not sure it's just about, you can just explain it on purely material terms.
I'm sure if you don't sit on this seat, you will say something other.
Exactly.
And if we are not in this constellation, but in another constellation, the result will also be different. So that also, I think the point of who design is very interesting, because he has influence on our thinking, he has influence on our exchanging and also elements.
But I think we need to become much more, I don't think design is invisible, but we need to kind of be better at seeing it, seeing what it does in those terms. Yeah. That often we always revert back to explaining it in very material terms rather than in sort of more complex relations.
But doesn't this lead back to the concept that And I think this is, of course, the social impact of design, that the truth is in the use of what is
Absolutely.
designed.
Because, yeah, I mean, I watch parks in New York City where I'm living now. Some parks no one goes to, and other parks are packed. It's really hard to explain why this park is empty and this one is full. But it just keeps happening over and over again. People just gravitate to certain spaces and certain environments, and they want to be there, and they're together, and they're enjoying themselves. And other ones, they look like aliens in the space. The humans don't look like they belong quite in that space. And it's a very interesting phenomenon.
And the same space can change also.
Precisely, yeah. But I guess that may be the context, as well. I grew up in a designed town. It's like Brasilia, but it's a version of Brasilia. Beautifully designed, really intelligent, very smart, very empathic. Horrible, disaster, complete disaster. Because people would never want to be on the street. If you saw a human being, it was like they came from Mars at any time walking around. It's really curious because it's like somehow this was designed in a way that just was rational, made sense, it had flow, it had even worked with geomancy between the magnetic mountains and this and all, very good. But disaster, highest suicide rate, highest drug taking, highest divorce, very well educated people, good economy, but terrible social consequences. Why does that happen? Why do we actually end up? And there's nothing false or true about that, that design.
I think that's also the most exciting point of our work is that we never really know before it is finished if it is really good.
Right.
You can be really professional, but at the end come a little magic moment who say, wow, now it's good, or yes, it's okay.
No, but it's true. But this means really in the use, it is happening. I have a very strange example I love to quote always, because especially if you come from Germany, you always talk about Bauhaus, and you have talk about the rectangular and the parallel lines. The funny thing is, we all know, or we should know, since 1850, that our eyes cannot see rectangulars and parallel lines. We cannot see them. So what are we doing? We construct them. So, and then the stupid architects and designers start to make rectangulars and parallel lines. No, we want, obviously, to see them. Why do we want to see this?
Is that because our tools have taken us in this direction, do you think? Or because
our eyes are in, and they can't.
It's not natural for us.
It's our brain, because we get nervous always if something is a little bit different, because then we know we have to work, and we are lazy people.
But the squares of Bauhaus wasn't squares.
Yeah, of course not, because they are
a big difference.
Yeah, they start then to make the
when
fictive
you
squares.
do it with computer is nothing.
Yeah. No, I know, because if you're a good designer, you know that you have to make a square a little bit round the corner, then it looks more rectangular than it is. But it's interesting, because that means that we have a projection, and we project something on the objects.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
And it's again part of the... Maybe the last question from my side, nevertheless, is design also...
You have 20
Yeah,
hours.
more, yeah. We can't speak, we can't answer this question for 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Maybe there are questions in the audience.
But we don't move into quarrels. But I try more, I try my best really as a moderator. Is design subversive? Yeah,
Always, you mean?
Is it subversive?
Can it be subversive, or is it always?
Yeah, can it be subversive? Is there something, nevertheless, you offer these normal structures like chairs and tables. Is there something you can nevertheless involve or move into this which is more than that?
It can only be subversive if you work with the content and not with the form. I think the form is not subversive. The content can be subversive. And more design is out of content, and that's the point who make it so unsubversive.
I have to think about that one.
That I can't. No, we can quarrel, because I would say all the quality, every quality is in form. Because the content is... you can say whatever you want.
It's the connection in between form and content.
Okay. Then we come to dialectics.
But if you look only, for me, this is absolutely not subversive. You can do it, you can make 20 turns, is not subversive. And that's a point to why design in the moment is so unsubversive, is out of content.
Well, maybe by content you mean politic of it?
It's a political dimension.
That I agree. I think I always use the example of the typographer, what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. But, where, and in some ways it could be seen within the context of that political moment to be very subversive, the early modernist approaches which were to encourage reading, basically to encourage readership as a democratization process against more authoritarian. I guess that in some ways you're then providing a subversive tactic through design.
It's a very good moment because we come to the 100th anniversary of Dada.
Yeah, sure.
And in Zurich I start to make posters about this.
I hope you know Dadaism. Dada, Hugo Ball, that are these people who, for example, instead of talking in normal language, they had much more intelligent language, like Fünf bevertetsu begif mu qui. It's not translatable, poor interpreters.
But this was a time who was absolutely stupid, who was the first war. Right. And you couldn't go in a rational way, but Dada was a kind of confrontation with this situation. So what makes the 100th anniversary of this element, they take the aesthetic of this element from this time and bring it in today, but it's nothing. So aesthetic is not the point. Right, exactly, yeah. The point is how can we today look what is stupid, and there are so many things who are stupid, and introduce again this stupidity in connection with the form.
Don't you think that's a problem with design education, and the way we tell design history? We always strip design of its politics of the moment. We always very quickly go back to telling the story in aesthetic terms or in those terms, and you take out the context, you take out the politics that inform that aesthetic or that material. That you look like you completely disagree, which might be good.
No, I wouldn't say that, but this may be, again, that we're a little bit...
you have 16 minutes.
We cannot be more precise. The problem is sure. Aesthetical, I never take as just, it's nice.
Sure. No.
This is political.
Yeah, sure.
And the question is for me not form, but the difference between style and form. Style is a specific way how to do it. Okay. Well, we always have to think about the transformation. What does it mean? And how could we cope with this, and what can we do with it? Form is much more this power structure in this whole thing. Taking every content with it. So the main point is form. Because but this is even Karl Marx, good old friend, He said, work is work, but the question is, in which form does it take place? And this is, I think, the important way. And there we are working even in the design field. We get a little bit lost here, people.
How do you judge the form, then? How do you determine when you look at form, how do you make a judgment of it, or how do you understand it in terms of you look historically?
It is how it's organized, right. How it is connected, how it is moving itself together in a very associative structure, of course. I think we should not talk any longer about this linear logical nonsense, but this associative power, which is, by the way, I would say, from the background, the grammatical background, very Chinese competence, much more than our structure from philosophy. Maybe if we don't struggle any longer, you have a question. Thank you.
I think this is a very interesting start to talk about how design covers something up. So maybe you can say that Volkswagen has covered something up quite profoundly recently. The question is then, what about fashion? Is that a cover-up of the body? Or so what the point I would like the panel to discuss a bit is what is the purpose in the end? Have we lost the purpose of design in the last decade when these new translations are coming into play? Is it truthful? Is it hidden? Where is it going? So how do you see the purpose of design today?
Changed that much necessarily, but the context has changed dramatically. So I do think design is, when we work with design, we're trying to, and of course it's always covering up in terms of fashion or what have you on one level, but then there is truth in the covering up, and there's reality at least in that covering up. That is who we are. So, but I think design is continuing to work to try and organize our relationships. You know, that's something I think remains fairly consistent, that it does try to, in some way, structure our lives and our interactions with each other and with organizations, with structures, with our bodies, with the world that is, you know, that we have made, that we structure. And I do think design is always this mediating force somehow.
Yeah, I even would
but
say
it structures us as well,
yeah,
of course.
But I even would say it could explain something for us.
Yeah, sure.
And it can offer possibilities for us. So it's an open structure, you know. It's the same if you talk about fashion, you know. We just had this very short in another context. You know, fashion, you can say, okay, it is obviously the first idea that it protects you against rain, sun, whatever. The second is you want to feel comfortable and get your own structure in it. And the third, of course, is you are talking to other people by fashion. So it's what's called communication. I hate the word communication because this is always excluding. He doesn't speak the language, is not involved. So we have to find a new word of communication. But this is, I think, of course, still part of the design. But it's much more, I think, this, there's a nice word in the English that is something like, in German we have Plaudergegenstand. It's you know, that you have things just for talking about it. It's also one of the, I think, very important parts, you know this when people visit you at home and they don't know what to talk, so they always look for something which is strange. So you always have to have something there which is strange, because then they can talk about it, and then there's this kind of small talk. Yeah.
What absolutely fascinates with fashion design is that you have every time the proof that the universalities don't exist. You make one product, and this product is absolutely great for one person and terrible for another.
Right.
And he expressed something for one person, and he's wrong for another. So I like in fashion design this confrontation or this introduction of the person inside of the possibility to accept this element, because you don't choose a clothes like you choose glasses. Glasses is very more authoritarian as a clothes. A clothes you choose it. You connect it with you. You bring it in yourself very more as another design piece. So I think that's a strong element of fashion design in the moment, is this quality of the interaction in between the object and the people, in the way that you say, in the way also of the I am this person because I clothes like this.
You try to tell the others who you are.
Who can be conscient or not conscient,
yeah.
But more and more it is conscient.
And I think to your point about surface, fashion is often seen as the most trivial and superficial of the design areas, but it's the most profound in many ways, and it has the most to say about all sorts of things. So I think I would reverse your order, your 1, 2, 3. We are increasingly prepared to be very uncomfortable and dress against the weather and do all sorts of things in order to, to say something about ourselves. We will sacrifice the protection and we'll sacrifice comfort in order to communicate something rather than, I think it's the other way around.
Can I have a question?
Please.
Yeah, I was wondering in your discussion, because I'm interested in the political part that Rudy is talking about, and I was wondering if you think about design. I think in the last 50 or 60 years, I think the whole design industry came up, because before that there was not such an industry, and the design industry is totally dependent on how technology develops and how the economy, the design industry has to serve the economy all the time. So I was wondering if you think about social design and social innovation, what kind of political aspect can you expect for the future? Because I think it's just an economical, design is just an economical thing these days.
Well, I would say not, and the intention of most of the designers. This is one of the huge dangers, I think, still in the debates of design, that there's a lot of ideology in this, justifications. In Germany, I think Germany and Italy are very strong in this. That they talk about social, and they do economy. And then they talk about social again. Right. They never do really talk about what they are doing.
It's the same in between Greece and migrants.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think we should shy away from the economy question. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it were not for an economy. It's the only way we got here is through an economic structure. So I'm not so shy about that, to say that design is implicated in economic structures. It's more like what happens then.
Yeah.
Like there was a great book I read a while ago, which basically was critiquing all the ways that we try and do good in the world through NGOs and governments and what have you, because we try and solve poverty through education, or we'll solve it through health, or we'll solve it through this or that or the other thing. And the particular person was advancing, I think, a very good argument that the only way to solve poverty is to put more money in people's pockets. But if you put more money in people's pockets, then they become the agents of their lives. They become the ones who pay for the things that they care about. They put their children in school. They go to healthcare. They do the things that they want to do. And they don't, rather than having this imposed upon them, a structure of how their social, what should be valuable to them, what should not be valuable, allow the economy to actually give them some authority about their own lives. Otherwise, without this, they're completely dependent.
But that's true that design absolutely changed in the last 20 years. Design was something who was subversive in a way before, in the way that propose element who the society don't will.
You don't think open source design is subversive?
Accepted, but it was something a little bit out of, and in 95, this was the point, the economy understand how strong the design can be.
Sure,
and this changed absolutely the relation in between economy and design, but also I think this changed the design at all.
But offering us many more chances to be subversive.
Exactly.
We are successful.
Exactly. That's what I
That's, exactly. Yes, but when you really see the production, not.
Look how subversive people in coding now are. There's amazing subversion going in open source coding, and like the Snowden, who was in Hong Kong when he kind of blew the cover on everything that was happening, and it was very subversive. These people are working in, there's always people work. I must admit, I really try and resist the idea that it was better back then, and we were more authentic, and we were more...
That's not the point. The point is I think it's difficult to compare the two elements.
Sure.
Because we are in a new kind of design who the politicians, economy, and all this wait from us something, and we are the solution. And that's dangerous. You are absolutely true. Huh? So the French politicians say, "Oh, we have a crisis. Designers, come help us." So it's
that's a kind design thinking
turning the problems at all.
Yeah.
That's and inside of this, I'm absolutely okay with you to say you can be subversive because you have a strong tool. But when you really analyze what the production of design is, there are some exceptions.
Of course,
And
but hasn't there always been?
So mostly is out of politics. And also in the social design,
Right.
you are not so political as you can be. So that's a point who for me is also disturb me a little bit, because we bring solutions who are not absolutely solutions with design. We think now the old persons will have access to internet. Yes, the rich white persons.
Yeah, but even they.
But every time a part of the problems are out in shadow again.
If you're talking about
and a very large part of problems are in shadow.
But even there,
Right.
you know, I think there was a fantastic quality.
That's camouflage.
There is, and I think this is one of these huge qualities in design. It is misunderstood. And always, you know, this is what we said, you know, I think the reality in design is always by use. Design doesn't exist if it's not used. But in the use is so much beautiful misunderstanding. This makes it truth. The misunderstanding is doing it.
But there's also, I mean, there's...
No, he's...
Oh, we got it close. You know, what's been going on in Latin America, and sometimes it's not just designers, it's designers working with mayors and politicians. I find this super inspiring. I think it's incredible, the way Medellin has transformed itself through design. This is incredible. And they talk about, I was talking to the mayor a while ago, and he was saying, we did surveillance, and he kept talking about surveillance. And I thought, oh God, that's pretty weird. Was he talking about like London-style surveillance with cameras on every corner? But what he meant was they redesigned all the parks, and they redesigned all the sidewalks, and they redesigned all, so people wanted to be in the street. And when everyone went in the street became safe. So they didn't need surveillance in the traditional sense. They had people on the street, and it became safer. This seems like and there's a lot of things like this that are happening everywhere. It's really interesting.
But this, I understand what you mean. It's very ambiguous. You know, I just was invited to give a lecture in Bogota on service design, and there was a huge audience of 800 people, and 200 of them were Colombian army. They think themselves to be service industry.
Yeah, right.
Interesting to talk about with them. So, but I think there's quality of misunderstanding and mistakes.
Yeah, right.
And misuse. This is the truth of the whole thing. Thank you, people, poor people. You have to make the understanding. You work, we were entertaining ourselves. You did the real work. Thank you for this, creative people. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to introduce the second panel. Actually, Matthew has been a really, really old friend of the School of Design since early 80s. He was a lecturer, senior lecturer here for more than 15 years back then. Welcome back, Matthew. And also, in the last few years, we have a very good collaboration. With the Design Institute for Social Innovation, we actually have a Thinker in Residence program each year. So we actually invited Matthew back to be the first thinker 2 years ago. He doesn't only think, he also writes. So actually he put together a book, put together a book for us. And so it's a very important book. Just to do another promotion, so next Saturday, there will be the third Thinkers lecture by a Taiwanese professor, extremely interesting as well. Now, so thank you to be here, Matthew, and moderating this panel. The second person I'd like to introduce is Kige Hifet from Denmark. She has been almost in Hong Kong every year now, because she is very important worldwide. She's the CEO of the of the Index Award. You might know, the Index Award. Probably Kike could talk a little bit more about it later. Basically, they have the largest prize for designers in the world. How much? 500,000 euro.
Each one, but the euro is going down.
Well, okay, we come back to it, Michael, okay? And also, Kike helps us a lot in the last few years. Indeed, she is the chairman of our International Advisory Board of the Design Institute for Social Innovation. So thank you a lot, Kike, for helping us to set up in the last 3 years. Also, the third speaker at the panel is Ernest. Welcome from Cologne, from Germany. Product designer, famous product designer, heading the design unit at Cologne of Yellow Design. And I don't really have to introduce Yellow Design. If you just Google Yellow Design, you see all kinds of products of different scale and different kinds that you know, or probably you use at home or on the street and so on and so forth. So without further ado, I pass on the stage to Matthew.
When we were asked to talk about compassion, we responded to this invitation with varying degrees of enthusiasm, skepticism, and in my case, a profound depression. If you have seen the movie Inside Out, I won't have to explain anything about Kege or Ernst or me. We are these characters, and I guess I am sadness. What I did was to put a few words that we exchanged in our emails before we came. People, humility, interdependence, reciprocity, of course, the Jiswo Bu, Bu Yu, but expressed negatively, Bu and Wu, don't do it. Later religions or later ethical systems said in a more positive way, do, but either. We're going to talk about a few concrete, practical, real examples so that we help, maybe we help focus discussion, and we'll come back to some of the ideas at the end. And Kege is going to start with redesigning breast cancer as one of the Index Awards. But I was also looking for a story that would link compassion, somehow link compassion to design, at least product design and things. And so we came up with the story. It's very familiar to almost everybody, of the spoons. And you would all too kind not to point out that spoons seemed a little odd in this list. But the question is, what is the difference between heaven and hell? And in hell, people have very long spoons. They are so long that they pick up the food, but they can never get it into their mouth, so they are always disappointed and they are starving and miserable. In heaven, they also have very long spoons. So they sit at a table and they feed each other, and that seemed to be a nice bridge between design and compassion. So I just changed the slide, but it's not this is not a lecture. We are just going to start maybe talking about.
I think the first thing I wanted to say is that to me, compassion is not about being good. It's actually about not being stupid. So there's quite a difference in that. The other thing is that compassion is about sharing the sufferings of other people. That's the meaning of the word compassion. And I think if we don't share the sufferings of other people or even our planet, we're going to be in harm's way very soon. So I think it's a very logical thing to share the compassion, to be compassionate and share the sufferings of other people. And in that, of course, design has some roles, and a lot of other professions has other roles. So it's not about designing solutions or final solutions. It's about putting the competences of designers into the pool of knowledge that can actually establish what we could call compassionate designs or social design or whatever we call it. So just to share one example, it's an example from Norway in Scandinavia. You're quite young, so you might not really face that yet. But in terms of cancer, it's something that all of us fear. And if you ask people what they're most afraid of, It's the basic things about not having a house, not having food, and then about being really ill. So it's a big fear among the human race. So in Norway, it took 16 weeks from a female found out that she might have some kind of cancer in her breasts. It took 16 weeks for her to get the diagnosis of this, which means 16 weeks of great fear, anxiety, and all that stuff that comes with having maybe a severe illness. So a design company called Designet, which is the biggest European design consultancy, I think, they set out together with the doctors, nurses, and patients at the hospital, the main hospital in the capital of Norway, to redesign the process of getting diagnosis for breast cancer. And the end result was that they limited the time of diagnosis of breast cancer from 16 weeks to 4 days, which means that now the females would have their diagnosis in 4 days, not going through a lengthy period of time where they're really anxious. But it also means, and coming back to the economy, to me, it's not about design or economy or politics I mean, these fields are merging. It's not one thing. So in this example, it was a lot of very different competences working together. Also the economy, because at the hospital, when you redesign the processes, it gets a lot cheaper to run the hospital. And it gets a lot cheaper for society because people do not get as ill. So what they did was that they redesigned every little bit of the process from you go to your general physician, say you think you have something in your breast. The next day what you do is you go for x-rays. The same day the doctors will examine your x-rays. The next day they'll have a conference on it. And on the 4th day you'll be called in again and you'll have the result of the x-rays and have all the tests taken. And on the 5th day you can actually start your treatment. So to me this is an example of design with compassion or compassionate design or whatever you would call that. So one example.
I always feel cynical in these situations, talking about compassion, and I always want to say, well, these stories are always very positive. They're very joyful. They're very happy. They're very inspiring. We want to go after the old people and the young people learning the software and Facebook, and after Kika's example of the redesign of breast cancer, right across, not just either or, but and. We want to go, oh, isn't it nice? It's really good. But I'm interested perhaps in how Index selects winners, and also not just winners, but the long list as well as the short list for prizes. Do you use compassion? Is one of the variables, that this product has more or less of it, or might reasonably be assumed to have more or less of compassion?
Or is it professional if you use compassion while looking for the best winner?
Professional, not compassionate, yes.
First of all, we do not choose.
No, and the process, process, yes.
So people tell us what they think is what we call design to improve life, which is what we work with. So people from all over the world for this circle of the award, we had designs nominated from 78 countries around the world. So people tell us what they think is designed to improve life. That's the first thing. Then we have a jury process and all that stuff. But basically, it's people telling us.
But when the jury is making up the long list, maybe not every country sending every example is included even in the long list. And then from the jury process, they must select the short list. And I just wondered, is compassion any one of the many variables, or anything like compassion is any one of the many variables that the jury process uses.
I think Matthew means the compassion score
Yeah.
in the process.
Compassion index.
The
The,
point
Yeah, the
seven.
compassion index.
Compassion 9 points.
yeah.
Compassion
This
5
is only
points.
like 4.5, but still that's pretty good. Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about it, and maybe
This-
it would help a lot to discuss the inner workings of.
The scale is
index.
only to 7.
Okay.
So, but we judge, or our judges or our jury evaluate the design through 3 parameters: form, which is about traditional design, surfaces, materials, all that stuff; impact, which is about compassion, how many people will it help, how severe are the problems, who can be helped, is it also sustainable, all that stuff. So compassion would be part of that.
Really?
Yeah?
Is impact not something more objective? I mean, compassion is somehow you have to guess whether the designer was compassionate or not. But impact is something that can be objectively measured. And
Very few things can be objectively measured, basically.
Impact is one.
Yeah.
That can be measured a lot better.
Yeah.
We are joking about, the...
Yeah, but I think we are not joking. I think we are really at the center of the point, because we are all professionals in design. And for me, the big question from the beginning was how to cope professionally with the word compassion, because it's in a very emotional word, and normally working is very rational. And that was my point in the beginning, how to cope with this word of compassion. I mean, there's sympathy, there's being empathic, and there's feeling compassion. And I think in this scale, it gets more and more emotional and also kind of philosophical. And so my question to all of us is how to cope with such emotional things in professional life. Because when I first heard about this topic as a German designer who worked for some years, I asked myself, hey, when was the last moment I had to cope with confession in my professional life? And I found none in the last 10 years.
But you found some beforehand, didn't you?
Yeah, perhaps we see it later, because then I found old examples when I studied, because I don't want to be naked here on a field where I've got... But for me, this is the central point, have you got a problem with working with your emotions in your job? Or do you think it's good to have emotions while making a professional judgment about something?
I think it's really, it's a little bit strange to me, because if I have problems with working with feelings in my profession, no. Because, I mean, we're people working together, and we work with people, and part of us are feelings. So I would actually think that the other part, not working with feelings in your profession, would be super, super strange to me. I wouldn't know how to do that.
And it's strange too for me that Ernst was saying that he hasn't really used fully compassion, at least more than 2.5%, in the last 10 years. Young people, graduate students, final years, fresh designers, tend to be very much attracted to compassionate design. But they're not really compassionate people. When you get older, you do become much more compassionate. When you have children, it's not a question of feeling compassion about the photograph in the paper. You can't even look at the photograph in the paper. It's too much. You feel too much. So strangely, there's a kind of inverse logic here. The younger you are, the less compassionate you are, but the more attracted to compassionate work, whereas the older you get.
Yeah, or another example to make it more clear about the emotions. When you judge about what's the best winner for your prize, for example, and there's somebody who you don't like, who is, to take the next word, perhaps ugly, and to which you have got no good emotions, you don't know why, then it would be not very compassionate. You would not act with compassion if you give him, not the price. Yeah. So that's what I mean. That's the danger of working with emotions. Yeah. Or I'm thinking about students making the compassion test before studying. So this is a place of morality, which is quite dangerous in some kinds. Yeah. So. In fact, I love compassion, yeah, and I love your work, of course, yeah, and I love social improvement, of course, yeah. But I think it's not so easy. It's not the right way just to say, "Oh, I'm very emotional and I've got a good feeling," and this is not the way to do right things.
But to be fair,
perhaps that's a little bit too simple.
To be fair, Kiko was saying that it's not about being right. It's about not being stupid. And it's about, I mean, we only got to 2 parts of this. And I think really it's an interesting question I hadn't realized, but the first part of the jury system is form.
Impact and context.
Yeah. Okay, but the form is something we were talking about, or you guys were talking about earlier. Impact and context. Tell us more about context.
Context is about also related to when you're going to talk about ugliness. I think in Denmark, I don't know if you know, but in Denmark, design is beautiful if it's like steel and black rubber and or whatever. I mean, at least it was in the beginning of this century. But when I go to India, and some of my Indian friends see these design classics from Denmark, they would never have them in their house, you know. It's too less colorful, it's too less ornamented, and it's just cold, and the materials are cold, and it's too clean. So that was actually one thing I learned from Index Award, which was being a Dane, you know, we have this famous Danish design thing. We think that is beauty. This is what is beautiful. But it's not, it's only to us.
So kind of...
So that's about context. Does it actually fit the context you need?
Yeah, I mean, context and empathy and experience probably describes quite what Ernst was talking about, that you really need to be able to put yourself in another position to even get off your throne of good design and things and put yourself in other. And that requires a degree of empathy to see yourself as other people see you and so on. Form, I think we understand. We don't know quite what it is, but we spend years and years and years teaching it and grading it, so we must. Can I come back to impact? Let's unpack impact a little bit more, because you said that's where the compassion is, but I thought, well, maybe that's maybe the last place because it's more objective. So tell us more about impact.
Yeah, actually, I never thought about compassion in terms of impact. You know, it's not a word we use normally when we talk about it. So, but to me, if compassion is about suffering and feeling, taking part in the sufferings of others, which is the definition of compassion, what we do within the impact parameters in Index Award is that we look into how many people are suffering for this and this and this, be that lack of housing or clean water or whatever it would be that we work with, or health. So if we translate it, and I have only done it in this, working up to this session, we don't normally talk about compassion. No, in Index Award. So if I was to put it anywhere, I would put it under impact, because that's about how much people are suffering from these global challenges that we try to address. But another thing I would like to, because there seems to be like an agreement we can measure other things in design. But form, I mean, you can never measure form. You can discuss it, you can like it or not, and you can feel something about it, or you can say, you can do it with professionalism. I mean, you know, this works in terms of form, you know about do the corner a little bit so it's not totally square, all that stuff. But can we measure it? No. In the same way that we cannot measure compassion.
I find it interesting because your impact scoring, for me, it's like we are also talking about social innovation. And it's like the score of social innovation, in fact, because in the beginning we've heard lots of the purpose of design, and I think, of course, I have the opinion that every design, every time has got a social impact. Even if it's just made good or bad. For example, this table, this edge here should be a quarter of a bowl. Then it would be nice, and then perhaps my feeling here would be a little bit better, because then I don't have to look there always, yeah? So even this is a social impact. And I mean, this scoring is for me a little bit about the whole thing, yeah? That we think more about the impact in every dimension design has. And that's not only social, of course, it's also about sustainability and so on. Everything we do has got an impact, or psychological impact, or an impact on the thoughts of the people, or on the fashion of tomorrow, or on everything, yeah.
Do you... Oh, I was going to ask... Sorry, I interrupted. No. Okay. I was going to ask, what happens... I'm still thinking about Inside Out, and you can already see the characters. What happens to dead social innovations or nominations to index or jury selections of the long list? When they die, as it were, they're no longer current, is there a kind of vault, a sort of container for old ones? In form, in traditional, I mean, when I was growing up, we had categories of good design, but we also had, surprisingly, it was quite upfront, categories of bad design. And people loved bad design, and the problem was that they loved the bad designs better than the good designs. And so there was a kind of capture of the everyday, the mundane, the banal, but also the awful, the surprising, it's so bad it's good. And there are all sorts of lost designs that would be captured. We allowed to have that moral category of good and bad, and that meant it was universal. When we moved to a new kind of discourse of social innovation and impact and context and empathy and so on, we can only tell good stories. We can only tell positive stories. We can never, I don't know, I find it very hard, I don't know about you guys, to find examples of not just failed not just failed examples.
I've got one example.
Well, okay, the examples that would get worse, make things worse, that were disastrous or even evil. These surprisingly are hidden away. We still don't have that moral category, and I wondered what happened to the I don't want to say failures, to the ones that we never see, the censored ones. Is there a container for them?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
The bad container. No.
Yeah. I want that.
No, I think because, I mean, coming back to Index Award, what we do is also we ask people, so what is the flip side of this design? Because also what you're saying is that if you try to improve something, no matter what, or talk about the impact of the table or everything, if you try to improve something, there's always a flip side.
Yeah.
And that goes with everything in basically in the world. So what you need to do is to try and map and be quite honest about what is the flip side of this. What is this example, an iconic design to improve life, which is called the Hippo Roller, which is basically like a lawn presser or thing you use to carry water. The idea from the designers was females in Africa always walk a very long distance with a little bit of a bucket of water on their head. So could we transform that situation? And these designers came up with this thing, this balloon thing you could roll, which was great. You could get 90 liters of water. That was cool in one walk. And then even the young boys used to race these hippo rollers, so they would, it would be not the females, but the young boys of the villages getting the water. But then it turned out that the females, the only 2 hours of the day, they had to not do really hard work was when they walked to collect water. They could chit-chat and talk and, you know. So, I mean, what looked like a really, really nice design was actually quite a horrible design because you didn't understand the context. You didn't understand that these 2 hours of collecting water was free, was like a pause for the females, you know. So
Well,
there are many examples like that.
I've got Matthew. I've got.
Do you want to talk about your flip side?
No. Forget about the flip.
No, I want you to talk about your flip side.
I've got the opposite story. Yeah.
Okay.
The Mephisto kind story. Yeah. You know, Mephisto. He wants to do bad, but at the end he does good. Yeah. Because the impact of the. It's the story of you know, the crabs in Germany. The crabs in the ocean. They put them, and then they put it to big lorries and drive them to Morocco, which is 2,000 kilometers almost.
What
all
in the
over.
water? The waste in the water? What? The crab?
The crab, yeah.
Yeah, the
Because
plastic or whatever.
Then in Morocco, there are women, and they put away the skin of the crabs, and then they drive all these crabs away back to
Prawns, yes.
prawns.
Ah, okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
prawns. Little
Good.
little prawns, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they drive them back to Germany. So this is absolutely
Wild.
sustainable bullshit.
Yes.
But on the other hand, and this is the crazy thing, in Morocco, in the parts where the women does it, the social structure has completely changed because now the women are making money there. And they are working completely different with the money in their families, much more sustainable. And in the end, there's a social impact at the region where they do this spoon pooling. Yeah. So
You have to do it, Ernst. You have to set up the Mephisto Award. The
but
Mephisto
that
Award
was
is
like-
going to be so
things are
cool.
not so simple. Always.
It was what Tim was saying.
Yeah.
You know, you need to get the money there. You need to get, or not the money, we need to get the jobs there. That's what really
No,
helps.
I think it's also, Tim was
I think
talking
you said
about
that.
misunderstanding or misprecision, or I think that was also unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences. That's what I wanted to say. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing in general, this story, but what I think is it's not always black and white. It's often gray about.
Do you want to talk about your life? Very briefly.
I think we are really nice people. I don't have to, but I could.
You
start,
still have
also,
18 minutes and 16 seconds.
Oh, I can do it in 3 minutes. Yeah,
Okay.
No problem. Yeah. No, as I told before.
You want the pictures? Or?
I think I must click here or there.
Just turn a picture.
Which one is the right button here? The right. Ah, here. Yeah. So I had to look for a very long time back to find examples for compassion like we have discussed before in my life. I ended up in 1998, and I must tell you it's real big fun to find your old computer and get some pictures out of it from 1998. And that's me in 1998. I was full of compassion. I had many projects in my university about handicapped people. I had the first project which was about the blind. It was a laser scanner here at the front, and then people could touch the surrounding and orientate well. And this was, I won a prize here. It was the Audi Design Prize. This is Dieter Rams, if you know him. This was for a robotic wheelchair, yeah. And this was kind of peak of my feeling of compassion, I would say now in the back, because this robotic wheelchair, it really, I think it took me 1.5 years to make it, because of this prize I got money from Audi, and it was patented and everything, yeah, and it was lots of work. It could do everything. It can drive everywhere. Do you make the slides, or is this okay? Do the next. Yeah, you can see here the main target was there that it could go upstairs, because the main idea was it's easier to make a handicapped people compatible to the world than making ramps everywhere and building up the world that you can go everywhere with a simple wheelchair. So this was more like an animal. It was in 1998. 2008. Yeah, that's you know how long this is ago. There was a touch screen right there. There was no iPhone existing, but you had a touch screen to look for the functions. Yeah, and so you see the problem. It could go side to side. It could turn to the right. It could lift you up. Yeah, that you can shake hands. It could go up, down. It could even go back in the car without help, because like an animal, it could go in. It could do everything. And yeah, I even did a patent on it. I thought about the mechanics. Yeah, I had everything. But everywhere I went, the people said, "Oh, you're crazy. You never can build this. If you build this up, it will cost just like a house." Yeah. So, lots of work, lots of compassion, but in the end, the impact to the world was zero. So now we go on in time. Now we got 2003. I had different customers. I was also repairing cars to get some money. And then I started making real professional design. This is, for example, this is for babies. Yeah, this is for Nook. I did a lot of products for them. This was my real big first customer. And this is really quite, you had to be quite empathic, because when you do things for babies, you don't do it for babies, you do it for the interaction of the mother and the child. Yeah, it's, for example, the soother. The main idea is you want to see the baby, you don't want to see the soother. That's why the soother is very reduced. Yeah, these are examples for the right thing is for learning to write in few steps, very pedagogical things and so on.
I can see the compassion score going slightly down.
So here you can see the commercial thing going really up, because this was about millions built of this stuff, and but also I had the feeling, oh no, you're doing good thing to the world. You have a positive social, because it's good for the mother. If the product is better, you can use it better, and so on. So next step, next slide, please. In 2008, the compassion level goes perhaps down again, yeah. Now it's the older mother. You see it becomes also a little bit more valuable. Yeah, it was a steaming pot for Fissler. There I had to think about the mothers which are afraid of the pressure in the pot. So also a little bit emphatic design, of course, and navigation. Yeah, it's good. People will go better, find their way better. Okay. Compassion going perhaps down, then more going to space, perhaps a little bit more luxury, nice customer, he wants to invest in the new products. Yeah,
the rich need your compassion as well.
Perhaps the rich may need my compassion too. Yeah, so perhaps going down. This is the question. Yeah, 2010, it gets even more. Especially, yeah, the first. Then, of course, the world needs fair stands, yeah, to find the products easier. The first fair stand, and then it was this fair field going on. Yeah, this was for BMW, the first big thing. It was for the electric cars, and of course, electric cars are very sustainable. As long as they don't get their energy made of atomic plants, but that's another story. And of course, there's also this compassion thing, my big company and everything. And 2015 now, yeah, you can go on. That's my last weeks. We had for the big luxury BMW car, which is also electric because of compassion, of course. We had a lot of technological communication, yeah, and we had an app, and as you see down there, yeah, the electric car was really explained very nicely, and so I made a lot of jokes in this story, yeah, but I think it's the sad and ugly truth that it doesn't matter what you do, and you can't always save the world, but you must do it with kind of passion, and you must find a meaning for yourself within it, and then it's okay. I mean, nobody, perhaps not Kike can, but the rest of the world, I think it's really hard to live a life completely full of compassion. Perhaps you must make more religious things then, yeah. I mean, as a designer, your personal meaning is quite important, and of course, it's important, whatever you do, there's an impact, and if you do it good, then the world becomes a little bit a better place, and the quality of design becomes better, and so the quality for the user becomes better, and so the world keeps turning on, and perhaps this is the simple truth about my feeling of compassion. Yeah.
I mean, we've got a few statements at the end, which we hurriedly produced, just working to the deadline, as always. I'm going to just rush on with one example. It's not going to be very long, but if you can turn the slide to...
I give you
oh,
this
okay.
thing which is really bad design. Thousands of knobs.
Yes.
You don't know which one is it.
No idea. It's just my example, and I think many of you may know it, the play pump, or sometimes called the roundabout play pump. It was developed in South Africa, in Natal, and the rural areas where water is a problem, not only in its cleanliness, but in its access. And so people use hand pumps to get water out of deeper wells. This uses the power of play, as we say, child's play. As the children play with the roundabout, so it uses the pump inside to draw up water. That water goes up to the cistern at the top, which keeps supply. And as an advertising executive got involved with this project to do good, I thought that if the cistern would have advertising, this could also be sustainable because it would bring in extra income, not just saving water, but and the water was free because the energy of children was used. And now why are you so cynical? All the world organizations, from Clinton to UN to World Bank, put money into this. It was such a visible symbol of doing good that it showed that social design did not have to be about lentils and sandals and like people wearing nothing. Actually, it could be fun. It could be cool. It could use advertising. This is a kind of transformation of the whole ethos of designing for compassion. And the money flowed in and still flows in. It is an enduring symbol of this kind of design. It was not until about 5 years later, or a little bit more actually, that an enterprising journalist got a calculator and tried to work out how many hours it took of children to play in a day to draw enough water for not just the village, but the surrounding villages. And it turned out to be that the children would have to play for 27 hours a day. There are no 27 hours in a day. The advertising revenue did not come in, and most of these cisterns were empty of advertising. There was no one to see it, for one thing. And there were some attempts, very smart attempts, to bottle the water, very small amount, sell it in rich countries for a lot of money, because, so it's called One Water. It promotes the charity. People buy it for a high premium, and that money goes back. But once that system had become part of the industry, that seemed to disappear. But also people realized that the mechanics of this were very difficult. When you use a hand pump, it's absolutely straight. All that energy goes straight into the pump action, and the water comes out at this level, and you just fill up. If you have to hide the mechanics inside the merry-go-round, the playground, it's very inefficient. The stroke is about a quarter of the normal. And the water has to be pumped all the way up. The kids are no longer playing. Play is sporadic, and that's what play is. So adults, in a rather demeaning way, have to walk around and around and around in circles, not actually getting any water out because the water has to go right up to the top, and then it has to come down, then you turn on the tap. It's colossally inefficient. That's why the water charities, the three main water charities, decided that they would pool their sponsorship and association and everything with it. Except that they couldn't. It is a bit like the story of the goose that lays the golden egg or something like that. You just can't give up those golden eggs. If the play pump was universally presented as a failure, an engineering failure, a commercial failure, it proved far too expensive to maintain, far too expensive to produce. Of the thousands that were planned, thousands, only a handful were actually produced, and they couldn't be maintained either. But, and this is my question, can a design fail in its function and yet succeed as a symbol? Because these charities still receive massive donations, and the play pump is still bringing in donations not only from big sponsors, philanthropists and charities, but all kinds of NGOs. Well, if we just turn over the page, we have plenty to talk about, and only 4 minutes and 20 seconds to go.
Answer yours?
Yes.
Because you ask if a design can fail and still be a good example. Since this design, which is an iconic, social design, actually 1 billion more people in the world have gotten access to clean water. Yes, this specific design is a failure, but it inspired millions of other designs, and that's how innovation works. So Grundfos did the SQ Flex, super well designed, working on the market, all that. So yes, it can fail big time, but still inspire others to do solutions.
To be compassionate, yes.
And like Better Place, Shire Gas's huge infrastructure for electrical cars, flopped, was the biggest investment ever in the world, flopped totally, but inspired tons of new systems coming on and being realized now.
Yeah.
So
if you have the Index Award for good things, and Ernst has the Mephisto Award for unintended consequences, the worst possible excesses of greed and luxury can actually prove very useful. I'm not quite sure what I have, but at least I have maybe the question that can failure still be success in a different level? And what does that really say about compassion and design? And that really is all we have to pitch to you, but I'm sure there are questions. And with 2 minutes and 46 seconds left, you have to be quick.
42, 41, 40.
I think we always have a wrong measure of design. I mean, this is only in the academic situation that we teach students to think about creativity, emotional values, and all these things. But all these things does not, in reality, works in the real world, because there's, as you say, there's many unintended consequences that we have to deal with. And then the responsiveness in itself perhaps could be a designer's job, I think. So be very responsive to the context and be very responsive to the users who use them, or very responsive to the situation or political, economic, or whatever. I think that perhaps is the quality of a designer. It's not about the products, or you could pick up a stone and then you could make use of it in whatever way, if you are responsive.
Look, I've got 2 microphones.
Yeah. It was a question about the last roundabout thing you were talking about. Wow, okay. Do you think that it would have been, you just said that it inspired a lot of things. Do you think that its failure is part of the inspiration? Would other people be as inspired if it had succeeded?
I don't have a I don't have an answer. I wrote it as a question, and I don't have an answer to it. But I like your suggestion that somehow the sadness of a failure, of something that tried and failed, is tragic. Yeah, and we do respond to tragedy. We also respond to kitsch, which tries to be something very great and fails. We love kitsch. We also love tragedy, and that fall is kind of inspiring because it encourages something, another attempt. When people fail, when people fall off the mountain, it only encourages people to try it again. Yeah.
I've got one opinion about this. If you've got the option to fail, then you've got more freedom in acting. Yeah, it just makes you feel more comfortable about your work.
But the failures are, I mean, a well-known part of any innovation or design process. So you mean, yes, failures are part of making better solutions or creating better,
to make experiments.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I would also just mention what you said about bringing to market. Does it work? All this compassionate design, can it actually be used on the market? Can we bring it to market, get it to the people who needs it? And I think that's the profound shift that's going on in the world now. We've been talking about this kind of design for like 15 years or something. What's happening now is that corporates and money are starting to follow. We're just about to establish, or just are establishing, a very big venture capital fund that will invest only in this kind of design from Index Award. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. So what's happening now in the world is that corporations, politics and so on are beginning to follow this kind of design and help it to succeed on the market, whereas designers are also getting a lot better to understand the context and not only doing good for yourself and your desk, or your drawers in your desk, but actually getting it out there where it's needed.
Okay, I think just as Michael's final line was misunderstanding makes design true, I'm still pondering that. Our final line might be that commerce makes, or in your case, corporates makes compassion real. And with all the ambiguities and uncertainties and embarrassments that go with that, as well as tragedies. I'm sadness. I have to end on tragedy. Thank you very much.
And on time. Exactly on time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Singing. So the third panel, the first one I'd like to introduce for this panel is Ute, also an old friend, Professor Ute Brandes. She is currently the professor of gender. Interesting, eh? Gender and design. Please, Ute. Professor of Gender and Design, also at Cologne, at the International School of Design. And she is the current chairperson of the International Gender Design Network. Indeed, Ute helped us to actually brought the International Conference of the Gender Design Network to Hong Kong last year, also at the festival. So the other two speakers we have is, first of all, Mika, director of the Museum of the Image at Breda in Netherlands. And then also Britta Pakau, Merlini Design, managing director of Merlini Design, of course, a famous agency having projects from industrial design to visual communication to branding and so on and so forth. So, yeah, we are running out of time. So you could have more details of their bio, long bios of the three ladies with the paper you have now. So, please, Ute.
Thank you very much, Elvin, for this invitation. It's kind of, the topics are very interesting altogether. I have to add one thing, because I learned from Matthew, but I don't really trust him. Maybe he was lying to me, because he is not a native speaker, but he does know Chinese characters and Cantonese and so on. he told me that, interestingly enough, our topic that is about ugliness, that's at least what it read in English. He said, I mean, the real thing in Cantonese or Chinese characters, it means beauty. So it's quite, so we will talk about this kind of the same. And you know, these two wonderful prominent women, I also like, we had a men-only panel, then we had a mixed panel, a little bit mixed, but I mean still male-dominated as most of the time. And that's why I insisted on having a woman-only panel. And they asked me that I should not give any whatever ideas or provocative things here to the audience, but simply I have to ask them, Britta, what is ugliness in design? For me, very easy task, you know. Now it's your turn.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. Yes, ugliness in design doesn't exist. So that's my opinion, of course, because it's always a personal perception if you find it's beautiful or ugly. It's like the two extreme aspects of one, or the two extremes of one aspect. It's like measuring temperature. So the question is, do you think it's warm here inside? Do you think? Who think it's warm? Aha, 1, 2, okay. So, and it's absolutely the same, I think, with design. Yeah, people will have the opinion it's beautiful because their personal perception, their experience, life experience, will come up with this perception, with this opinion. So, yeah, that's my statement. It's just the same, and it's depending on your personal background.
Okay, yeah. Hello. Yeah, actually, I totally agree.
That's boring.
I think you have my vision right now. But I think ugliness in design, I think let's first talk about ugliness without design. Because I think it has to do with design anyway. Design is everything. If I meet a person which, for example, I'm not so attractive to because I think he or she is ugly, but I slowly get to know that person very well, then the person becomes less ugly and becomes maybe a little bit beautiful. So I think this is how a human being works. And this is one of the systems, but another system, if we talk about stuff and things and products and images or media, I think whatever it is, but if there's a marketing system behind it that always presents it to you in a sort of a repetition, then in the end it becomes beautiful. Or it becomes something attractive to you because the repetition, that's how our brain works, and all the marketeers, they know about that. So they use that system to create, even if things are very ugly, if you see them, if you get confronted with that every day, every hour, then suddenly you get used to it. And so that's a little bit the marketing system behind ugliness.
Okay, this is so your idea is that you become accustomed to something, and then through new experiences, and then it's maybe not so ugly any longer, or you don't care. You just said ugliness and beauty are kind of the same and very subjective. Okay, now let's try, because you are kind of agreeing on each other, which is a tragedy. So I try to ask you, what about, let me say, weapons? I mean, a beautifully designed gun.
I like that.
Which is, yeah. But of course, I mean, in terms of social design, maybe we should not really appreciate this.
Then we should not like weapons.
For example, maybe.
But that doesn't mean that the weapons are... I remember that this, I don't know what kind of fashion brand it is. Maybe it is Prada or Louis Vuitton or something. They create bags with a form of weapons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the whole combat style is very cool, so it's very fashionable thing at the moment, and it was already years before. But I think it's again a question of what perspective you want to choose. If I, as a peaceful human being, being asked, then I say weapons are ugly. From the point of design, weapons could be beautiful. And I know very nice weapons, especially those, what's the name for? Yes, bows, yeah, for example. So it's, again, the opinion depends on the personal perspective. Yeah.
But I mean, this is pretty crucial for society. Then you say, I mean, everybody has his or her own wishes and desires, and then you do and like whatever you want, and also you use it. I mean, you simply can't say so. And second question is, isn't there, I mean, let's say the idea, the concept, and the purpose, and the use of an artifact, a designed artifact, can you divide between beauty in this case and maybe a very ugly purpose? Is that possible? Isn't that then aestheticization in a very problematic political sense? No, I got you.
Mika?
Britta.
Yes. Okay, that's aggressive. And that's exactly, again, the motivation. I mean, if a weapon is for defense, it's a different point than aggressive. Yeah? No, Uta? What do you think?
You know, like the Americans, they defend their territory, that is their home, and then they shoot just people who did a mistake and entered their territory.
I think maybe we should not talk about weapons. Okay. Maybe it's too difficult.
Okay.
Let's
talk about another artifact. You suggest one.
Well, maybe if we not talk about weapons, maybe we should talk about cars. Oh. You know? Not only for a few minutes.
Disputable thing. Yeah.
Because cars, if you have these kind of SUVs. If you look around and you see all these SUVs and very small people in it, but they probably feel very safe when they drive around in these kind of weapons. I think that are the weapons of the people right now. Huh? Yeah. And I think they're very ugly. Yeah.
This is here, unfortunately, sorry, I have to interfere because I totally agree, unfortunately, again, with you, because this would have been my example if somebody just spontaneously would have asked me, what you think is a very ugly, artifact in the world, then exactly one of the many would be the SUVs. First of all, they look like tanks, they act like tanks. Meanwhile, in Germany, every morning, they overrun little school children. Because all these bourgeois parents, one each day maybe, or each week, I don't know, because they are these overprotecting, these helicopter parents, I talk about bourgeois people, they all come with their SUVs, and because they are so high, and these little school children are about that size, maybe a little bit larger, taller, and then they simply overrun it. Instead of letting them go to school, it would be much safer to cross streets than to be packed in one of these terrible cars.
But do you think people maybe also to the audience, do people like to SUVs? They think they are beautiful because so many people driving around in these cars, and it's growing, I think. Women?
Yes. Like SUVs.
Women.
Very safe with tinted windscreens, bull bars, the full works about 14 feet off the ground. It's great. Yeah. If you ask men what kind of cars they want.
They wanted just a very...
No. I did my research. It's not true. It is true that these bloody SUVs are bought by both sexes, especially in the US and UK, also now in Germany. But the reasons are totally different. It is with women that they state, at least, they feel safer, especially with their kids. They have a good overview when you are smaller, and from here top down, you can look better and things like this. When you ask men, I mean, really, if they try to, I mean, if they dare to answer kind of honestly, they still have the idea that they find themselves, I mean, being in Cologne or in London or in Hong Kong, they are in the outback. And it is, you know, they have to face risk and danger all the time, although they are in Cologne. But they you know, they think of this. And there's one nice thing. There in Germany, you can, for these SUVs, you can buy mud spray. So for men, it is not so nice. I mean, if you drive through a clean city and your car is always clean, then it does not look like being in the Australian outback. So they spray mud on this, so in order to have this feeling. Well, I think both are kind of very stupid ideas about these SUVs, but they are at least different. Okay, so
I think you are not
tolerant.
tolerant enough. I can assume that people feel more sportive and feel comfortable to be as high as in a SUV, for example. And I try to drive in it, and it makes fun because you are all over all others. So it's, being honest, I agree with you, but I try to go in another direction,
So
because
it's
it's so successful, and this is manipulation again.
But as everybody has an SUV, then you are already same. So you have to build even higher cars to feel superior to the others. So that's this, if we go that way, then
then
I don't know.
we have skyscraper. Whatever.
Skyscraper cars.
but on the other hand, let's face it. I mean, people like it because it's really very powerful. You have a lot of material with you. Yeah, it's a status symbol. And
but everybody of these people talk about sustainability all the time, you know.
Yeah, it's
and saving material resources and so on.
Well, you can make a very sustainable SUV, but. Anyway, I think I have another example.
Yeah.
Shall I talk about the picture?
Oh, already.
Oh well, you decide.
Because then it becomes more, in a way, more serious and a little bit less funny. So I would like to go maybe before we have that one, which is really interesting and interesting to discuss. But could you think of, I mean, purposely using the category of ugliness for designing artifacts in order, for example, to provocation? I mean, keywords such as critical design objects, things like this. Could that be a way to provoke people, to make them again aware that things are designed and that there is problematic design and maybe more smarter design or whatever?
I don't know, Uta. I don't know. I think I really think that ugliness is no topic in design. I mean, you never think about. Well, sometimes I do, if you're not making products, but just, I don't know. Sometimes you work from an aesthetic into sort of a meaning, and then you work, and then maybe you don't make ugly things, but in the end, everything is about content, everything is about the concept, everything is about why you should do something and why you should make something. And then the whole way, the form or the colors and the way it looks like and the way it feels like, it's always in the second step. So it's never the first step.
The context is the
so
main
it's
thing.
very difficult to talk about to talk about the surface only.
This is so true, but then may I give two examples? One is already a little bit older, you know, designed by Fiona Raby and Tony Dunn, when they had this quite disputable, huggable atomic mushroom. I mean, they made a pillow, a cushion, you know, to really feel comfortable and sweet, and it has exactly the shape of when there is an explosion of a nuclear plant. It's kind of weird, I mean, to hug around with that pillow. Second example is, what was it again? I had such a wonderful example. Yeah, exactly, thank you. Fashion. It is already also quite some years ago that Rei Kawakubo, you know, the owner of Comme des Garçons, the Japanese fashion brand, and she was, and this was a real scandal, even in the fashion world where they always look for something, I mean, extraordinary, strange, and so on. And she designed a fashion season, I think it was 98 or something like this, and it distorted female bodies completely. I mean, they made something here that you look like this. They made such a thing here. They made, and it never came in, let's say, harmonical things. She did something here, but not here, and so on. And it really looked in kind of, at least very, I mean, weird. And this was, I don't know how many people bought this, but at least it was, for her, it was a statement, you know, to say, let's think about bodies and distortion of bodies and ugly bodies and beautiful bodies and so on.
I think those discussions are very, very sensible and helpful. At the end, perhaps to learn more about yourself. Yeah, how do you react, and how could you explain your opinion? So I think it's absolutely necessary to provoke. Yeah, and to let me say, to analyze your pendular. Yeah, how do I perceive, and why do I think it's an ugly body then? Yeah, how do I react and why? For example, this is another point we could talk about, this beauty awareness of women, yeah, youth, yeah, this idea of women have to be young, yeah, without any wrinkles or whatever. This is also a kind of ugliness or beauty discussion. And
well, I think that's also, I think that's a good example, because I think it's what you can see all the time since we have Photoshop, that we all see these photoshopped people in this standard beautiful position. But slowly I see them all walking around, real in the real world, you know. So they're not photoshopped anymore. They just become more beautiful every day. So, and I don't know what it is, but I see also here in the audience, I see all these beautiful girls. And how did they do that? Because it's
We need consultation later.
Are you all Botoxed here? Are you all using these kind of, these...
Poison, you know, to paralyze your wrinkles?
Well, it's not poison. It makes you more beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, but this is again something, because you're so forced by advertising and so on to have that in mind. And as an older woman, that's what I meant before. It's always very helpful to be confronted with those things, because you have to find your own point of opinion for yourself, not for the others, and that's very helpful.
It's easier to say than to do, of course, because you are evaluated by others, and you are kind of staging or posing towards other people, and they will evaluate you. Yeah. And now it's the question, a social question again, by what standards, or by what maybe more intelligent ideas. So there is something that really obviously tackles the society, you know, this stupid idea of a beauty image in society. Meanwhile, by the way, it also has reached, I think, younger boys and young men. It's not only, also they now become bulimic and have to go to hospital and things like this. So at least it's more justice now in this kind of problems between genders. But okay, so there is a problem. Should we now, because Mike has in fact now a very, very interesting, or let's say, an example.
I was thinking, because I don't know how much the topic is going on in Hong Kong, but in Europe we have to deal with a lot of refugees at this moment. And there are thousands and thousands of refugees coming up to over the sea from Africa, and a lot of them are dying in the sea. So there was a picture last week or 2 weeks ago. There was a picture from a 3-year-old Syrian boy. He was lying dead on the beach. I don't know if you all saw that. I mean, in Europe we saw that every day, every 5 minutes, the picture was somewhere.
Every Facebook then.
Every Facebook account, the picture was there. But actually, I think it's a very ugly picture.
A dead body lying with the face in the sand.
Yeah, it's a very. But then people were very. How do you say that? Got very emotional about that image, and they start, and also all the politicians. So because of that image, they start thinking different about the refugees. So one image, one actually ugly image, changed the whole discussion on the refugee topic, and that I think is a very interesting thing.
Do you think it's maybe again it serves a good purpose, although maybe the intention was ugly, or do you think it's a problem anyway? If I mean, there are these refugees, they are coming into Europe already since years, and now more and more since months. But then you have one image, and if you carefully analyze it, of course, it is first of all, it's a kid, a young kid, 3 years old. If you would have I don't know, 69-year-old whatever man or woman there, would it have had the same effect? I guess not. Then, of course, thanks for heaven's sake. I mean,
you have
we
a
couldn't
question?
see.
No, you want to say
first
something.
you shut up, Rudi. Maybe later, because we first have to finish this. And then, okay, this boy was lying on his head. I mean, with the head in the water of the ocean. So, of course, at least you could not see his face, but it looked kind of peaceful. And then people, about a kid and about such an image, they become emotional that even stupid Mr. Cameron, you know, then said, okay, we take a few refugees more. But I mean, they never did that before, you know. And this is something that to me is highly, I mean, moralistic. And also that's why I think this image is ugly, first of all, to expose, to stage a dead boy, a refugee boy, and secondly also then to say, oh, this poor boy, and so on. There were 1,000 others who died before. So how do we go with these things?
I think it's anyway highly manipulative. Yeah. So okay, this is a shocking photo, of course, but I mean, at the end, the motivation or the opinion of people has changed in eventually. Direction of more compassion and whatever. So the result of that picture, and there is again is the right word to say it's ugly. I mean, it's not. It's definitely a real picture. I hope it was not a fake picture. So what's ugly about? I wonder. I mean, it's a picture. Yeah,
but it's also. I think it's also an example of the whole image culture that we live in. I mean, that's how we get manipulated so much about visuality in general, because we are staring all together. We are staring all day in our mobile devices, and I think it's changing our way that we perceive or that we see and get all the imagery, but also the products, the whole lifestyle. I think.
And Uta, why did you say it's immoralistic to show that? Why is it?
Because it was speculating exactly on it's a kid, it looks sweet, but you cannot see maybe the distorted face and so on. And it plays with all the idea of media that is something that is strategic and tactical to get a certain effect. And I doubt, honestly, Britta, that this effect, when you say, but now more people think, oh, we should welcome more refugees to our countries, that this will have a long-lasting effect. You know, in 2 weeks it's over, I guess. And then there are more refugees coming into Europe, and now people, even those who were standing there with welcome signs and giving them water and something to eat in the beginning, now they think, but maybe now it's enough. Now, I mean, how can we host all this? So it is, I think there is the effect when this is simply either forgotten or you need a new shocking image. And then, so I doubt that there is this effect that really makes a social distinction or a social change.
Yeah, okay, it's always easy to complain and to say that's negative, but what's your idea of making it better? How do you want to get the positive or more filled with compassion, opinion, or perspective of people? How do you want to reach that?
I mean, through experience with these people, that is to bring together. I mean, people from that country who lived there for quite a long time, and the newcomers. That is, it's typical that, for example, in Germany, where you face racism and really, I mean, aggression against these refugees, is exactly in those states, federal states. Where they have 0.005%, something like this, migrants, because and for them they are aliens, they are strange to them, they are strangers. And the more maybe you have the opportunity that you can communicate with them, the less you have these kind of racist aggressions. Hopefully.
But I think we should go back to the visual impact of images or objects or people, or it's. But I think we can make sort of a conclusion that it's all sort of it's all the surface, because it's all there's so many manipulation in visual styles.
Anyway, yeah.
So we cannot talk anymore about ugliness or beauty or something. We always have to look under. Michael, you have a question.
Yeah.
I think then it was Rudi before, because he was waving heavily minutes ago.
But when he's raving, that's not so serious. It's
Excuse me.
No, but just one question. I think whenever you see, sorry, no, but whenever you talk about, for example, a city or about a person, I think any speciality you identify the person is not by its beauty, but by some mistakes. The ear is not correct, or the eye is looking wrong, or the nose is a little bit flat or something. And then I know this is this person. Because beauty is... It's nonsense. It's just everything is the beauty, everything is the same. And only by ugliness you start to be special. And the same with cities.
I think that's not ugly.
Exactly. You are talking about your inner self. Because, I mean...
No. I even don't know. You don't know what your self is. Come on.
So you say he's
What is self, lady?
But it's not true. I see the nice things.
No, come on.
I promise. I don't see that I'm not looking at the negative things. I'm searching always
ugliness
for
is
the
positive for
things.
me.
No, you said you are looking what's wrong.
Yeah, this is positive.
No,
if
that's
everything
negative.
is fitting, it is negative,
No,
because it's all the
negative.
same. That is boring.
It's always
Beauty
a
is the
mirror,
most boring thing of the world.
Yourself. It's always the mirror of yourself, how you perceive people.
Self doesn't exist, come on.
Okay, emptiness. Yes,
now,
okay.
Rudi.
Was one day after Germany say they will lose 40 milliards of euros because of Greece. We never see an image about Greece. So one shadows the other.
Right.
Yeah,
it's true.
Even highly
Don't
manipulative.
talk
Double
any longer,
manipulated.
because now we have the dead boy. Yeah, right. Okay, so now it's quiet again.
Yeah, it's
So-
quiet. It's
So, okay.
there's another question.
When we talk about ugliness and beauty, and this is a panel with a female gender, is there a distinction between feminine and masculine design, and is there a distinction between how a woman will design? Can you see that something has been designed by a woman?
Yeah.
Or can you see that it's been designed immediately by men? And if so, how do you define this?
Oh, this is another panel because it will take. You know, this is my specialty, gender and design. Okay. So I don't. Then I don't stop talking. I would say, of course. I mean, I cannot guess this glass whether it's a female or male glass. I mean, in terms of making, of creating. But I would state the design process very often is very different, because experiences are different. You encounter from when you are brought up. And that's why also where you look into details, you look into different details. I have lots of studies. I show you later. So, okay, but
I think one of the, and I have to say, one of the very female designs that I absolutely recognize all the time is that from Zaha Hadid. I don't know. We are in that building right now, or not? Yeah. So, and I think she created the whole female architecture line in the world. And she's also influencing men with her style, I have to say. But there's always coming sort of round architecture coming up right now in the middle of sort of blocked buildings. And I think that's, I actually, personally, I don't like it, female style of architecture. I like the man style, the block style.
Okay, we will have another discussion about that topic later. Alvin.
Well, we all know that this tendency of movement that design is moving away from making objects or images more towards services and strategies and so on. And there are lots of good examples that we all know today, such as Uber or Airbnb and so on. And they, of course, as we know that Airbnb, for instance, they were actually founded by design students, and B, they increasingly use design. We could somehow see them as design projects as well. So my simple question is, how do you judge, or how do you measure, how do you perceive beautiness or ugliness in this kind of projects? Because they're really moving away from the traditional judgment.
I think they're very beauty because they're very smart. And that's for me, it's always an measurement factor if something is really smart and new was heißt ersetzen? You know, replaces something which is perhaps not convenient anymore. Yeah, which is perhaps too old. Yeah.
But I also see sometimes I see the other side of that, because I recently did a project about privacy design. And privacy, we call it crypto design, and it's about how we are safe, how we can communicate safe, and it's very difficult. The privacy is sort of hidden. Huh? The design for privacy is hidden because you are not allowed to see how things are in the back offices are organized, if there is security involved, and this is a bit. And we did a crypto design challenge, which we asked students and young designers to come up with to make privacy design visible, because it's always hidden. Because if it's visible, then people know when they are confronted with security or not, and that's a very strange area. It's a little bit. It's not so much. Designers are not so much involved yet in privacy design, and I think they should become involved.
I would argue, Alvin, especially when you mentioned the Airbnb example. It started off like also Apple in the beginning, so the legend says, but I think it's true. Okay, students work, but now I think it's a totally ugly process, service design, because it takes, meanwhile, it's absolutely professionalized. It is kind of replacing hotels, but not only those, it's replacing accommodation for people who have to live there. You know, you have now many pretending this is my private house. They have a house with different apartments, and then they rent it out to these tourists for 1 day or a week and whatever. And you take away room for people to live, and all the others, you know, gentrification becomes higher. So meanwhile, I think it's a really bad thing. And there are cities, as to my knowledge, also Paris. I mean, officially it's forbidden to do so. They have a new law, but of course it's easy to work around this. But so, for example, you can see that sometimes there is maybe a beautiful idea or at least a very smart idea, and then when it turns to be too commercial, maybe the same with Apple, then it becomes kind of an ugly face, because in terms of social things, you know.
Yeah. You want to say something? No. I thought about an example about a privacy issue. For example, I don't know if you have it here. If you are at home and you call and you want to eat something, you call a restaurant and they bring a pizza to you, for example. And now they have new services that you can see when the how do you say that, the traffic guy, the person who's bringing the courier, he's getting his pizza in his motorcycle and then going to your house, but you can see from your house where the pizza guy is, you know, so what is his route. So if he sometimes stops, or he has to go to bathroom, or he has to, I mean, if you are the person who ordered the pizza, the guy who's bringing it has no privacy anymore, because this is an extra service, but you only controlling him. And these kind of new design issues, I think, are so bad, so ugly.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Okay, there is another question over there.
Thank you. And we always say that ugliness or beauty is always determined by our own choice, but I think in most of the time that is not true. For example, I always think my painting is more beautiful than Picasso's, but the truth is that actually, my painting is ugly, but I just think that is very good, or my mom thinks, and I paint it very well. And so what I mean is, there must be some other factors that determine the beauty and ugliness is not all determined by our own choice.
Yes, of course. Of course, there are economic values, there are cultural values, family values. So it's all in a much bigger context. So, of course, it's not only personal, but your personal perception is influenced by social things and economical things, political things. So at the end, it's personal again, but influenced by so many things.
Thank you.
That's why, again, I mean, even if you wanted to, and definitions are anyway kind of dogmatic, but you could not even find a common term for ugliness in terms of design, for example, and beauty, because it's really, and maybe it's good, you know, there we see, we can talk about globalization a lot, but there are still, and I think it's very good, there are still quite a lot cultural differences, and that's good. So also in terms of what you evaluate as being beautiful or ugly, and things like this. And so this makes at least the world more diverse than sometimes we think when we talk about globalization. I have maybe we have 4 minutes, 45 seconds left. There is I quite like this. It's an old quote by, an American philosopher and writer, Ralph Waldo Emerson, around mid-19th century. And he said, and I would just replace one word, the secret of ugliness consists not in irregularity, but in being uninteresting. And I would now, today, for contemporary design, I would state the secret of beauty consists not in irregularity, but in being uninteresting. Could that be, a shift from 19th century to 21st century? Would you agree, or do you find it uninteresting, this question, maybe?
Do I look like that? I think I did not get it. Simply.
No, he said, problem of beauty is not that it's not regular, that it's not tidy, that it's not in order, but it's simply uninteresting. And I now replaced the word ugliness by beauty. Beauty is uninteresting.
Yeah, I think we should not talk about beauty as well. We should not talk about ugliness, but also not about beautiness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's again
it's a sort of dead end.
That's perhaps why we did not react. Yeah, I think it's uninteresting. This question is uninteresting.
Thank you so much. So we see we agree, and they really chase me
it's
here.
Very uncharming. It's very ugly how we act here.
And I think maybe everybody now is tired, and we have another 3 minutes, but we don't use them.
Please, maybe there's a question.
Yes.
The pizza boy comes, you've been talking about the pizza boy, and he brings the pizza, and there are 5 people in the room, and they eat it, and they all say, wow, that smells really beautiful. What's the secret about this pizza? Does anybody know?
If a pizza smells beautiful, you never say that.
No.
When you eat
I've never experienced such a kind of pizza being beautiful or tasteful.
No,
you know?
taste. I mean the taste, yeah.
Ugly.
Yeah. I mean, what's the secret when all the 5 people say that it smells beautiful?
This is a joke or what?
No, I'm searching the truth of
Make
beauty.
You are ugly. You are behaving ugly. No, I think I also did not get it. So why people think it's tasty? It's a tasty pizza.
What's the answer?
All the 5 say it's tasty. Yeah? So there's a consensus of all these 5.
Yes, we have huge consensus
of
of perceiving beauty or ugliness, of course. Yeah.
€20 and it must be beautiful.
No, I think they have one leader, and he's important. And he said, "Isn't it a wonderful taste? You know, this pizza." And then the others don't dare to say, "No, I dislike it."
I think we should not stop the whole discussion with this.
With the pizza.
But if I may, one question, very short remark. It was a little bit pity that we also could talk about the smell. Is that beautiful? About sound, about taste. It's not only the visual structure, I think.
But I think we would come to the same results. I think it's quite similar.
So we will have the quarrel again that I would love, if everybody stinks the same way of the same beautiful perfume, it is boring.
Yeah.
So it's boring like beauty. Beauty is the most boring thing you can find.
But especially, smell is something, it is, very difficult. I would not like to live with somebody who stinks all the time tremendously.
Not with durian.
I would divorce that person.
Not with durian or stinky tofu, yeah, that's true.
Example. Yeah, but okay, this is also not a nice ending, so we should have something else.
Should have a nice ending.
What could we have? We could end with wicked problems, famous Mr. already unfortunately dead person, Horst Rittel, and he tried to find, I think it's 8 or something, terms about, it was, in those days, it was about construction sites and so on, but you easily can adapt it to design, that whenever you try to solve a problem, there is arising a new one, of course. It's always, he also says, it's always a new problem. So you cannot define from, oh, now I avoid this mistake and then it's good. No, there is then a new problem coming up. Then that's why he said every design is just a one-shot operation, and then you have to learn anew, and you never will solve it. So it's not so much about the idea of solving problems, but of trying to have the right things. What are you, again, you were on the panel already.
Yeah, but I thought you can close it with this beautiful thing.
Should we? Okay. Another old poet, English. Beauty is truth, truth is beauty, which is for contemporary times, I think both is wrong. But I'm the moderator, sorry. What do you think?
No, you can, of course. Why Uta?
I mean, first of all, there is no truth. I mean, at least no objective, so-called objective truth. And secondly, also, there is kind of beauty everywhere or nowhere. That's why, and so you cannot, if you exchange the one for the other, it still stays something that is never true and beautiful.
It's like the failed failure before, we had before.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, it's 000. Look.
Wow.
Please come up for the group photo and then please give another round of applause to all the speakers today.